Bill Jamaica.
Bill?
Yeah.
Oh, Bill was Bill.
Fine name.
Okay. I'm gonna make noise now.
He's got a lot of money.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, you got one? Hey, that's pretty cool. All right, we're gonna get underway here tonight. I want to thank everybody coming out on a rainy night in November. We've got holidays approaching. This is the November meeting of the El Dorado Hills Area Planning Advisory Committee. Vice Chair Tim White, Vice Chair John Reslier. I'm looking for, I don't see Brooke on here yet. Brooke Washburn, our other Vice Chair. And Bill Jamaica, who's currently the chair of our Transportation Standing Committee. But before we start tonight, we want to take a moment, and we need more than a moment, but to recognize, the passing of our friend, John Heidel. And John was a founding member of APAC back in 1981, among many other things. We've all been trying to collaborate to sort of chronicle all the different tasks that John took willingly for our community. And the list is long. Most of us here, most of us people in this room, friends with John. I've known John. I've been here since 1995. I've probably known John since 1995. Obviously we have a special Board of Supervisors meeting on Friday at 9 a.m. To recognize John and to honor him and remember John. And I don't think that most people here will forget John. So if we could take a moment and just keep a good thought for yourself and a good thought for John and his family. All right, thank you. So, as we all know, John was always busy, and so he would want us to get underway and get working. So, with that, we're going to start our meeting. The first thing we do for our meeting, oops, I'm clicking over here, so I can watch what I'm doing. We call a meeting to order. Ask if there's any that we adopt our meeting agenda. Are there any changes that officers want to propose? So we're moving along. The first thing we do is we have an opportunity for public comment for any matters that are not on our agenda tonight. If you want to refer to anything that's on our agenda, we ask you to hold on until we get to that topic in the course of the meeting. So we'll open up here in the room first. Are there any comments anybody would like to offer? Comments, questions, concerns? We don't know if we have any answers, but let's go. Oh, I forgot to turn these microphones on. We were asking people to come up to these microphones. You got that one? And then I'm going to turn this one on for our speakers.
I wish he'd please identify himself.
Oh, yes.
A couple months, you'll be throwing things at me. Greg Ferrero, and I'm the elected supervisor replacing John. First, I just want to express my condolences. I know you guys known John a long time, and we're friends, and he's going to be a great loss to the community. I take over in January. I just want to come up and part of my job is to appoint a variety of different commissioners with different responsibilities in the county. And one that's very important is the Planning Commission, as you all know. And I just want to introduce Dave Spower, who will be, providing he gets approved by the other 4 board members, he'll be my planning commissioner. He's got decades of experience in city and county government, economic development, and I think he'll be a great choice, and he'll help me through the, help me understand this process. So thank you.
Well, thank you. And thank you. Pending the process you have to go through, but we appreciate that you're willing to do it. And you're probably going to hear from us a lot. So. There is some truth in that, but I think you are more than qualified. I'm very grateful that you're willing to do that for our community. So thank you. So are there any other public comments in the room? Seeing none, let's jump on to our attendees online and see if there are any attendees that want to raise their hand on Zoom if they have any public comment for matters not on our agenda. I see none. So moving along. Typically what we do is we remind people how you become a voting member of APAC as you volunteer to work on a project review or a subcommittee. And if you don't think you know what you're doing, that's okay. We didn't know what we were doing then. We probably don't know what we're doing now. But APAC members will help you with the process we have. It's entirely possible you might have a process that's better and more helpful for us. So if you're interested in working on a project review, you can contact anybody at the top of our agenda. Our email addresses are on there, or through our website. There's an info account on there that you can email into. So, and then the next item, we always start with supervisors communications, director. So Supervisor Turnbow is here tonight, and George, if you have anything that you want to share, or if
The biggest thing is I hope that everybody shows up. Is that on?
you can use that.
Oh, okay. Anyway, I hope everybody shows up at the special board meeting on the Friday. It'll be a 2-hour presentation that starts at 9 o'clock in the honor of John Heidel. And there's going to be a slideshow, and so it's going to be a real hard event to get through. It was really hard for me, especially these last 2 weeks. You know, John and I worked on a lot of different things together. We might not agreed on a lot of things, you know, but we worked on certain things together, and we were special events, especially when it came to the Employee Appreciation Day. When we were out there flipping 1,000 hamburgers for everybody to appreciate all the people that work for the county. So, and then also we were just at the veterans thing in Cameron Park that we do every year. John and I both do it to hand out the badges and the coins to all the veterans and stuff. And it was a great event, especially meeting all the veterans and eating lunch with them and getting to talk to them and know them. So we've done a lot, and we shared a lot of that kind of stuff at events. So it was a shock to me, especially when I got that call on Saturday that he passed away. When actually Wendy called me, I was outside. My phone was in the house, and I got back in, and she called, and then and I called her back, and then she told me. It was devastating to me, and it's been really hard for me. I don't know if anybody knew, if you were at that first board meeting or listened to what I said a poem for John, and I will do a prayer for him on Friday. And also I'm going to give him a BOLAs that I have, because I'm a pastor of the El Dorado Community Church, to the family, which has a cross on it. And I will be giving that and donate to the family, because John, like I say, he was really good. He really cared about the county. He very much cared about the community. So anyways, a great person, great man.
Thank you, George. Appreciate that. It's a tough week.
It's been really
2
hard.
weeks, a tough 2 weeks. So moving along.
Hard on all the county staff and all the county department heads too, it really, you know, so the whole county.
So I should also share, talking with John's daughters, that John had 2,000 contacts on his cell phone. So it's a lot of work to reach out to all those people, but they've been doing that. So it's difficult. It will continue to be difficult. And, you know, we're going to do what I think he would want us to do. And just, you know, with John, it was service before self. So we'll continue with that. Moving along. We have a slate of guest speakers tonight, and I'd like to start with Jerry Barton, who's the Senior Transportation Planner for El Dorado County Transportation Commission. The Transportation Commission is not technically the county government. It's unique, but they help with a lot of planning to secure funding and to help us design in conjunction with DOT, you know, what our transportation and circulation systems look like and what's possible. And Jerry's willing to join us tonight virtually. He has a presentation for us. Jerry, you should be able to unmute, and you should be able to share your screen when you're ready, and then we'll see it back here on the screen behind us.
All right, great. Hi, everybody. Good evening. Again, like he said, I'm Jerry Barton with the. Can you hear me okay? Can you hear me?
Yeah, it was on maximum volume, and we all heard you. So thank you, Jerry. Okay.
Okay. Well, thanks for having me. And yeah, just a little background. The El Dorado County Transportation Commission is a regional transportation planning agency. Our territory or geography represents the western slope of El Dorado County from the Tahoe Regional Planning Agency boundary in the Sierra Nevada down to the county line there in El Dorado Hills. We have do we have six? We have six commissioners, sorry, seven. We have four of the county supervisors and two city council members. So that's our makeup. Since we only have one city and we don't represent the city of South Lake Tahoe, we just have the city of Placerville members and the board members, and not including the board member from Lake Tahoe. So every 5 years, we have to prepare a regional transportation plan. That is a 20-year plan that sets out the investment strategies and planning for the transportation system for a 20-year period. And we look at both the short range 10-year and then long range 20-year options. And the plan has to be funding constrained, which means that we can only include projects for which we actually anticipate or forecast that we will have available funding for in that 20-year period. So that's a bit of a balancing act to determine what's available kind of at the state and federal level and what we can be competitive for. A lot of fund sources for transportation now are discretionary, so they're competitive, and we're competing with the large cities, LA, San Diego, Bay Area, and even Sacramento around the state. So being a large rural county, it is rather difficult, but we want to do the best work we can with planning and do really extensive outreach. And that's part of why I'm here today. And I appreciate John inviting me to come here and talk to you a little bit about the regional transportation plan and some of the outreach efforts we've got going on. So I'll go ahead and share my screen. Hopefully I'll get the right screen here. Okay. So we actually have two planning efforts ongoing presently. One is the regional transportation plan, and another is a next generation transportation investments strategy. And they're basically working in lockstep together to help us identify projects and then prioritize them and use some of the performance metrics that are being used commonly in transportation around the state. Performance measures are, basically tools to align projects to funding sources and then specific like state policies, in particular those around climate change and resiliency and vehicle miles traveled reduction, or VMT. So that's kind of what the next generation transportation investment strategy is. And so just because we're kind of catching up here, we've been doing quite a bit of work over the last year on the regional transportation plan. We've completed and presented the goals, objectives, and strategies to our board, the El Dorado County Transportation Commission Board. We've held 4 RTP advisory committee meetings. We've had about 30 to 40 people attending each of those meetings. And John is a participant on behalf of APAC, John Davey. And so we're continuing to work on the various chapters contained in the plan and the project lists therein. We're also coordinating closely with Sacramento Area Council of Governments, who's currently preparing the Metropolitan Transportation Plan for the Sacramento region. And our projects will flow into that plan and become part of that for the whole region. So with the next generation transportation investment strategies, we did an outreach survey between May and June of this year, and we had quite a lot of responses, and I'm happy to go through some of that information with you if you want some detail on it. We completed a draft existing conditions analysis that was just presented to the El Dorado County Transportation Commission this month at our meeting last week on Thursday. And we've also completed a draft climate and resiliency analysis. And then we've launched this social pinpoint interactive mapping tool, which I'm going to show you. So I don't want to bore you all tonight. I know you've got a pretty full agenda. So I do have a number of additional slides. The one that I want to show you right now, though, is our timeline for the regional transportation plan. As I mentioned, we have our social pinpoint outreach tool currently available. And we just held advisory committee meeting number 4 this month in October. We're going to When you prepare a regional transportation plan, you're also required to prepare a program level environmental impact report consistent with the California Environmental Quality Act. And so we've just released today, in fact, the notice of preparation for that. And we're going to have a virtual scoping meeting on December 4th. And we intend to close the social pinpoint outreach tool that I'm going to show you on December 15th. And then we'll have a discussion about prioritization as a part of the next generation transportation investment strategy early next year. And we should have a draft plan, including the policy, action, and financial element available early in the spring. And then we'll have the EIR out for 45-day comment period in May, and we hope to adopt in August. We have some extra time in the schedule. We just need to complete this by the end of next year. So that's kind of where we're at with the RTP, and that's just a quick overview. John, you know, at the will of the committee there, if you want me to, I have a number of slides that can show you some background information. I think you've already seen this from the APAC meeting, but I'm happy to take a little deeper dive into transportation and some of the analytics and metrics and things we've been looking at, you know, for both of these projects. Otherwise, I can just go to the social pinpoint tool and kind of show you that.
Well, if there's anything that you'd like to highlight, obviously we'd love to see it. So it's your discretion. We do have a free building for the evening. So if there's something that's pertinent, we'd love to hear it. And then, of course, we'd love to see the presentation, the new tool.
Sure. Okay, I'll just do the Reader's Digest version of this presentation quickly and move through. There's 28 slides, but I'll try to keep it real quick here. So we did an analysis of emerging transportation trends and impacts in El Dorado County. One of the things we look closely at is population and income. And one of the income is a big metric used for some of the discretionary transportation funds. A lot of fund sources are identified to support and help those underrepresented or disadvantaged communities with low income, because they often have one vehicle household or no vehicles, and they rely on transit or walking or biking to get around. So some of those counties, or those census tracts in the purple there on the right, are census tracts with a high number of individuals with a low income, below the poverty level. And then no surprise on the population that, a lot of our higher, more densely populated areas are closer to the county line. We have a large aging population. That is probably not a surprise to all of you either, but our percentage is 22% presently, and that's 7% higher than the statewide average of 15%. Transit services, with COVID, as everyone probably knows, transit service took a huge dive, but it is starting to creep back up. And with recent return to work requirements for the state, their transit is really starting to increase, in particular the commuter service to Sacramento. You're all, I'm sure, aware that we have a lot of social and recreational trips through travelers on US 50 to Lake Tahoe, and then agritourism trips to Apple Hill. And so, of course, those are primarily concentrated to the fall months and as well as the summer months with trips to Tahoe. But interesting that a lot of the trips that do come into El Dorado County and end here from other areas are for shopping and social and recreation. We export quite a lot of commuters each day, but we also import a number of commuters. 23,000 actually come into the El Dorado County plan area, so between the Western County line and the Sierra Nevada. But again, not super surprising information, but always good to update the information that we already have and make sure it's current and the trends are still accurate. We are seeing a lot more people working from home, and higher than the statewide average for that, which is also may speak to some of the interesting trends in some of the commute patterns as well we're noticing. We are a little bit slower here in El Dorado County to adopt electric vehicles, but still increasing generally. We have quite a few EV charging stations. Those orange dots on the map are representing electric vehicle charging stations throughout the county, Western Slope. And then I mentioned previously our questionnaire. We had 466 responses, which is a tremendous number of responses for a county like this, especially for a plan like this. This, not everyone's willing to spend their entire evening talking about transportation. So we're really happy to get that number of responses. We did have a couple pop-ups and try to encourage folks to engage in the survey through social media and other communication methods. We had asked folks a number of questions, so we'll be going through some of the results. Majority of people reported that they drive alone. Quite a few people were carpooling and vanpooling, and really some very surprising number of people indicating they walk as their primary mode of transportation, and a pretty good number of mode share there for biking as well for our rural county. Majority of the respondents were in Placerville, El Dorado Hills, and Shingle Springs. Overall priorities indicated by respondents were about really road maintenance, and then also road safety and just concerns that are typically related to enforcement or intersection design, curve corrections, that type of thing. The priorities for investments were around road maintenance and repaving, and some respondents said they want to add lanes to reduce congestion and coordinate signal timing. And then priorities kind of across the board for improvements to public transit. And then also similarly for bike and pedestrian facilities, are favorable responses for those. This is a summary of the write-in comments. We thought it'd be good to sort of categorize the responses that people took the time to actually write a sentence or two about. So safety and enforcement came out on top there, and then maintenance and repairs again, and roadway and traffic management, and then bike, pedestrian, and public transportation on down the line there. I mentioned a bunch of this already, so I think we can move on from there. And then we can just dive right into social pinpoint here. So you can find this on the EDCTC webpage. It's edctc.org. And then I already clicked on the regional transportation. I'll go ahead and just kind of show you exactly how we get there. So you can click through these pictures, or you can go right to the interactive map here on our homepage. But if you want to get to the regional transportation plan page, just click through there, click on that. Interactive map is here right on the side. And then each of our meetings that we've had, the Regional Transportation Plan Advisory Committee meetings are available to view here. And we have the mapping tool. So this is our CEQA notice of preparation I just mentioned. Sorry for the delay. Does anyone have any questions maybe before I dive into this about the information presented so far?
So we're okay up here on the dais. So if you want to go ahead and proceed, we'll get to the room after you show us the cool stuff. Sounds good. So a little bit of information and background about this. And then this is the first map. So there are two maps. This one, review and comment on proposed roadway projects, and then review and comment on bike, ped, and transit projects. It's important to look at these icons first. This lighter blue is unfunded projects. These are dark blue is partially funded. And then these are some people have identified an issue and then or proposed new projects. So it's a fun tool to kind of mess around with. If I can figure out how to expand it, there we go. So this would be one of our unfunded projects. And so you can read about the project. This is an auxiliary lane, westbound Cameron Park Drive to Cambridge Road.
Auxiliary lane is the lane between two interchange ramps, typically on a highway. And you can write a comment. You need to enter your zip code. We want to make sure people are, if they're hopefully commenting from our area, or even if they're from out of town, that's fine. We want to know that. And you can make a comment, and then you can kind of rate however you feel about the project. So we can maybe check something in El Dorado Hills and see what kind of comments we got. A new park and ride area to service an SMF Airport Express bus. El Dorado Hills Boulevard Interchange Phase 2B eastbound ramp is a funded project that's moving forward. And another El Dorado Hills comment here. I think there should be regular bus service from Green Valley, Francisco area to the El Dorado Town Center area. Convenient public transportation is needed. So that's kind of how this works. This is the map. You can click there to add a marker and make a comment. I don't want to do that, but you certainly can. And you can take a look at everything throughout the county. So that's the roadway map. And then this is the bicycle, pedestrian, and transit map. So I do see a comment here. Bike pedestrian trails on train tracks. So this sounds like this person wants to develop the El Dorado Trail. The transit project, El Dorado Hills Park and Ride improvements is there. So, does anyone have any questions? That's pretty much the extent of the information I have to provide for you, and I'm happy to answer any questions. I appreciate the time here.
So, hi, Jerry, John Rassler. If people make a comment about a certain project that you have, what do you do? Rate how many people actually make that comment, or how, I'm saying, how do you act on that comment?
Yeah, that's a great question. And essentially, it really does depend on the comment. And we'll need to do basically an analysis of every comment we get and review each of the comments and see how if they tie to existing projects or programs, or if it warrants a new project being included in the plan. So that would be sort of the, one might be forward that comment to El Dorado Transit, for consideration and analysis, or review within the context of their current plan to see if there's something that already addresses it, if, maybe the commenter was unaware of. And then, the most extreme would be, this is a great idea. This is definitely a needed project, and we'll include it in the plan. Where or on what time frame or what fund source, that remains to be seen right now. It's all going to depend on the project, but we will certainly summarize all of the comments and put them together. Those will be in the next generation transportation investment strategy. We'll have responses and review of what the action needs to be for next steps on the comment or proposed project or whatever it might be.
Open it up in the room. Would anybody have any questions for Jerry? We have a microphone up here. You guys should come up if you're going to speak there. And if there's nobody in the room, we'll ask people online and Zoom if you want to raise your hand to ask Jerry a question. So, well, I'll ask one question since I think you've been pretty thorough with your presentation tonight. So, if there's a project in the CIP, and it's not funded yet, generally, is it, it's priority based, but is it also based on what sort of funding opportunities there are for a project, Jerry?
So the majority of the county's CIP projects are included in the RTP. So probably the majority that are regionally significant, I would say. So they would be included in the plan generally. A lot of those aux lanes you're seeing on 50, those are TIF projects. And but if there's potential, the project is going to need state or federal funding, then it's going to be considered in the RTP.
Okay.
There might be some really small projects, maintenance projects generally. We don't include all of those unless they're like a bridge. Maybe a bridge replacement might get included if there's some other elements to it, but we don't necessarily include maintenance projects. But generally, yes, the majority of the CIP projects would be included.
Yeah, and the reason we ask because our CIP is it's a 20-year document, and there are projects that have been on there honestly longer than 20 years. But there are also some small projects that might qualify. Like you suggested, there might be opportunities for state funding or federal funding in terms of grants. I know in our community in Bass Lake that everyone's interested about the roundabout, the potential roundabout at Bridlewood Drive and Bass Lake Road with the park being developed by the El Dorado CSD. And I know that you guys had identified some, I want to say it's about $800,000 for that potential project. Oh, there it is.
Yeah, it's in here.
So
There it is.
but that makes it a little more real when we're talking about projects, because a lot of these projects are like you suggested, are waiting on TIF fees or other funding sources. And just because something's on the CIP doesn't mean that we're talking about a 20-year horizon that it's guaranteed. It's just what's possible with those funds being generated and opportunities. So I know there's a lot of small projects in El Dorado Hills that people are interested in. So what we'll do is the Transportation Commission website's already linked on our website, but we'll go ahead and put up a post so that people can see the tool, and we'll suggest people to participate and see if you can get some more engagement and feedback there. I did have one other question. We've been talking for a long time about a frontage road that will cross through the old executive golf course here in El Dorado Hills. And the CSD right now is, in the process of determining whether or not they want to purchase that second golf course property for almost $10 million. And, I've been associated with some of the working groups on that, and people are wondering, when we did our analysis of the Central El Dorado Hills project, we were concerned about the traffic impact from that parallel capacity roadway country club coming down. And then, at one point it was coming through the grocery center parking lot, and the other opportunity now is that would come out by the near the clubhouse for the old golf course. How set in stone are those alignments? Are those, because I know as APAC, we were concerned even when it was proposed to move to Serrano Parkway, we were looking at the LLS numbers, and we're concerned about, it's already sort of an impacted roadway right now. We didn't know moving it around if there was a good place to put it. So I know a lot of discussion has been about, with the JPA connector, would it be better to pitch that parallel capacity across Silva Valley Parkway and onto White Rock, because that's a project that's pending in some shape. How dynamic are these projects when we're looking at them? That's why I kind of asked before. Is it just what funding comes up first in the priority list?
Well, there's a few things there to unpack. The
just here to help.
alignments, these alignments are roughly based upon what we got from the county, and they're certainly not, engineering alignments. These projects, if they're not funded presently, there's probably zero real engineering design associated with them. So they're conceptual, they're very conceptual. So if it's a funded project, there might be some level of engineering design that takes place. And I don't know if everybody in the room knows, but like there's 4 phases of development to a project like this. It would be project approval and environmental document. And through that, they typically get to about 35% design. And then it would be plan specifications and estimates. And with that, they get to like 65% design, and then right of way. And then you finally get to like 100% design before you go to construction. So there's a lot that goes into building a project like this and building and designing environmental clearing a project like this. So yeah, that's definitely something that is in the hands of DOT. We don't actually do that. We really just work on long range planning and then help the county get funding so they can move these projects forward with their engineering teams. So there's that. And then in terms of prioritization, we're like that. I mentioned the next generation transportation investment strategy. With that, we'll sort of look at projects that fit well with certain fund sources and try to determine through that analysis, which we haven't fully developed yet, by the way. So I'm just we're just now starting to dive into that, and that'll be the next step after we get this outreach and we close the social pinpoint page. But we'll be looking at a number of different metrics to analyze projects and determine how they can perform against various metrics of environment, VMT reduction, resiliency. There's going to be a whole bunch of them, and I'm just kind of spitballing right now, and I don't really want to do that. So be happy to circle back with you, and you'll get that information as a member of the advisory committee. We'll be running that by you, but there'll be more to come on that. So, but prioritization is definitely a difficult thing, but we're gonna see what we can do with this. And we only have so much funding, and we have a large county and a lot of diverse needs. So we're going to do the best we can.
Jerry, John Rassler, can you show us what your plans would be for White Rock Road as the connector approaches White Rock Road?
I can only show you just what's on the map here, and that is just the Capital Southeast connector section. But that would be that sounds like what you're looking for is something more along the lines of engineering design. That would be something that DOT staff would have to address for you.
It wouldn't be anything that you would be looking at right now?
We have the Capital Southeast connector here on the map, and we have a project description for it. But I don't have any details about what any intersections would look like or cross sections or any of that. That would be something that DOT would have to provide for you.
Could you just answer this one question? Many of us are under the impression that because the connector is federally funded, the rest of White Rock Road, which would become part of the connector, would also have to follow federal guidelines. Can you comment on that, or it's not within your bailiwick?
Yeah, it's not, and that's getting into detailed engineering design discussions, and that's not something we do here.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Bill?
I can follow up with DOT at our quarterly meeting on Monday.
Okay.
To see what the status of that is.
Thank you.
Well, if there are no more questions for Jerry, since I monopolized his time, we'll go back. Any other opportunities for a question? Seeing no hands. Jerry, thank you again. We always appreciate when you take time to join us. It's a lot of information a lot of people don't hear about, but it's important as we're all experts on traffic because we drive in a car. So, but when it's an opportunity to talk to a real expert, we really appreciate it. So thank you for spending time with us tonight, and your opportunity to come back. Anybody from the commission that needs to raise some issues or get some feedback, we're always willing to be engaged with your processes. So thank you again.
Yeah, and if anyone wants to reach out to me directly, if you have questions, you know where to find me, and yeah, feel free. We're always happy to help as much as we can.
All right. Well, thank you, Jerry.
Okay, thanks a lot. Take care. Have a good evening.
Thank you. So now we're going to switch. Sorry, I'm jumping back over here. It's hard to drive and talk. So just moving. There we go. So that was an opportunity. It's valuable for us to hear from the Transportation Commission. We only get to hear from them like once a year, maybe twice a year. So looking forward to more engagement. So next, we have a guest speaker. he's had a very long day. Scott Hodgson's here from PAC Trust, and he wants to talk a discussion with us about the pre-application for the Gateway El Dorado specific land, which is, it's a pre-application. So if you want to try this one over here, that way, as long as it's green and you can talk into it, we should be good. So extend some kindness. Scott was in Washington this morning, and now he's here with us. Washington, D.C. this morning, and now he's here with us tonight. So
It's a privilege to be here. Let's see if this.
so that doesn't work in the room. It's only for the Zoom people.
Oh, hello, hello, Team Zoom.
There you go.
I'll speak loudly. So yeah, I might be a little more subdued than normal. I think I recognize most of the people in the room here. Thank you so much for having me here tonight. I thought I might just briefly update on where we are on the project.
That's a slide that I had up. Does that help or not help?
Yeah, this is a great slide to start with, but
Scott, you want to come up here and point it out?
yeah, it'd be great if I can.
Sure.
I don't want to infringe on everybody's space, but I'm gonna, since I'm right-handed, I think I'll turn this direction. And then I'll try not to, I'll use the eraser side.
There you go.
So just by way of reference, I think most people here know where our project is, but we're at entrance number 3 to the business park on the southern end. And this would be the water treatment plant right here, Blackstone, Heritage, Four Seasons, just to kind of get a sense. Four Seasons would be sort of off the map over on this side. And we own about 100, just under 100 acres here. And about 24 of those acres are in a conservation easement. And so the piece that we have to build is about 70 acres gross. The conservation easement comes here along what we call Channel 1, and then it comes all the way down. This is the midline of Carson Creek, and then we jump across Carson Creek here. And so all of this is in a conservation easement that was created and funded circa 2010. I could be off by a year or two there. And we just recently finished a parcel map for this property. And the purpose of that parcel map was to essentially realign Carson Crossing Drive. So here we're at Heritage, here's Carson Crossing Drive, sort of ending at Golden Foothill. We were aligned on this station point. I think we've jokingly called this piece here the road to nowhere. It's now a road to somewhere, thank God. But we built that road in that same 2010-ish timeframe in connection with applications for a couple of buildings that did not get built during the great financial crisis. They were R&D buildings that today would probably have struggled to have good market acceptance with the excess inventory of office space as people have, through technology, converted to a much bigger portion of their work week on average being work from home. So we're going to come back to this, John, because this has some of the essence of what the application is, but maybe if we jump forward.
I went too far.
That's it. Yeah, there you go. Okay. And actually this has the zoning activity on it as well. So this is a little easier to comprehend if you have been to near the site recently. This is the Tractor Supply store that was built a couple of years ago. We are just finishing our first 2 general purpose industrial buildings here. And I've got a couple of pictures of those, but these total about 145,000 feet. One's a 69, and I think the other's a 78. Math majors, feel free to correct me. These buildings will be done, I think, first or second week of December. And John, if you jump forward, I have just a couple of quick pictures. Go forward one more. So these are renderings of what the buildings were intended to look like. And they're not fully landscaped yet, but if you jump forward one more, you'll see, that's an actual picture taken maybe a week or so ago of the buildings coming into finish. It's interesting how perspective affects things. This is in fact a rectangle. I didn't build a building that's shaped like a weird little trapezoid, but They're really nice. The buildings have come together beautifully. I'm happy with the way that they've been produced, and just to kind of remind folks how they're organized, they're capable of receiving office on the front. There is no loading on the fronts of the building, double stack parking, then forward to a parkway on the back. And then the back sides of the building are set up for dock high or ground level loading. And then this building over here then fronts to the retail that's on the other side of it. I think there might be one more picture there. This is just a straight down look at the buildings. Here they are rectangular. So we didn't fail. So here are the loading aprons. What you see in concrete are the loading aprons, and what you see in asphalt are the ramps up to the ground level loading for the buildings. There's the double stack parking on both sides, double stack parking. And then here's the multi-use trail that we've talked about before that is built to the first channel crossing. And then right here, and we'll see this on the next slide, is the retail that is being produced. If you roll forward a little bit more.
A little more?
Yeah, so let's stop here. So here's that same multi-use trail. The industrial buildings sit over here. Here's Tractor Supply, just the skinniest little piece of it showing right there. And these are the other two buildings that are currently under construction. So if you've been on this corner recently, you've seen the walls formed for these buildings and the pads formed. And if you roll forward, there's probably a little construction progress. This is a rendering.
Too far? Stay there?
No, that's okay. You can go forward. It's a rendering. This is just kind of what the buildings architecturally will look like when they're completed. And then if you roll forward one more, there's probably one more rendering. That's the other building. And then one more forward, you can kind of see where we are today on these. And go.
I think that was, let me check.
Was there one more picture there?
I think that was page 9. Let me, I'm gonna jump over here real
If
quick.
not, it's just a construction progress photo that would show the tilting of those buildings.
That's where it ended.
Not a problem. Probably got left out of the presentation. So if you go all the way back then to the multicolored picture of the site plan. For those of you who've interacted with me before on this project, either at heritage meetings or meetings in our construction trailer or in connection with the tentative parcel map, there was a pretty extensive conversation that was undertaken about, could we explore some buffering uses around the industrial warehouse portion of the project? And I shared in those meetings that we had previously contemplated and had been in a variety of conversations with elected leadership and county staff about how we might be able to explore some buffering uses here. And so we submitted an application for a specific plan, which is a land use application, and it's a discretionary land use application. This site is currently zoned R&D, which is a zoning that allows a pretty broad table of uses, but it doesn't capture some of the uses that we are proposing on the site. And some of those uses occur in the community commercial zoning. And then we also have proposed high density residential 24 units per acre on some of these sites. So that application is in the pre-app process. You know, we're headed to a J6 hearing. And with John's passing, I'm guessing that probably is probably February timeframe. Director Garner may have a better sense of that, but my guess is we'll wait for the new supervisors to be seated and get situated before that comes before the supervisors for a J6 hearing. And long story short, we're proposing to take this piece, and this piece, and take them to community commercial. Some of the uses that you might have in community commercial that you don't have under R&D would be like a service station. We actually think this site right across from the water treatment plant has good potential as a service station. A food grocery type store. This is not a use that's available under the R&D zoning as an example. Hotel is not a use there. So there are some community commercial uses that we think could be introduced on this site. There is not a lot of land in El Dorado Hills that fronts onto Latrobe that is not already committed that has a level entrance that could allow it to be some of these types of community commercial uses. So we're proposing that here. And then these purple are actually flexible zoning. We proposed either community commercial or high density residential on this site, which is a little over 5 acres, and this site, which is a companion site to this piece here. So here we've proposed only high density residential. Here we've proposed either community commercial or high density residential under the possibility that this site and this site might be combined. To give you a sense, at 24 units per acre, this is maybe, each of these is maybe 110 to 120 total apartment units if it was built out to the maximum coverage. And then this 3 acres here, picks up another 50-ish units if it were to be combined with this site. And then if you'll go forward one, John, this is the current plan for the remainder of the R&D piece. So it would really just be 4 more total sister buildings to the 2 buildings that are currently delivering here. So I did have a few questions on sort of uses that we've talked to here, and I'm under confidentiality agreements, so I can only talk about types of uses. But food is really what these sites want to be here. There's not a lot of food that's in the business park. We are finalizing a deal with a coffee user that would have a drive around with a 14-car stack there, and we have to finish that use before we can finalize some of the other uses. But the other uses that are at the table are a sandwich use, and there's a pizza use that's there, and I'm guessing we'll see some other food uses along the way. Is there a picture there that's got the retail expanded that maybe shows the one that shows the roundabout?
Oh, sorry, there you go.
I want to talk about this a little bit because this is something that I've alluded to in previous meetings, but this is something that is now starting to make an appearance on the CIP program. And there is a fair amount of energy developing for the production of a traffic circle at the intersection of Robert J. Matthews and Golden Foothill. And for us, we're somewhat agnostic to whether that does or doesn't happen, but to be able to move forward with these buildings, we have essentially designed them so that we can continue to use our private road here as our primary entrance, or if the traffic circle were to occur, then the traffic circle would become our primary entrance. We would skinny this down here. We couldn't eliminate it entirely because our utilities all make access through that portion of the site. But if that traffic circle were to occur, this is sort of our rendering of it, not DOT's rendering, but just trying to make sure that the site contemplates the possibility for a traffic circle to occur there. So it's an alternate ending that we've prepared for. It required a little bit of scrambling to get our site plan rearranged. So that is the application. So this is by right development. The industrial buildings are by right development. But going back, if you will, to the multicolored drawing at the beginning, these pink, purple, and yellow uses are discretionary approvals. So we would go through an entire land use application process. And that journey starts with the J6 hearing, and it starts with sort of the community outreach that we're engaging in here. So there is my update. Questions that I might answer?
Start up here first.
Yes, Scott, what about on the 2 industrial buildings that are almost done? What type of tenant have you rented?
Have not rented.
Tenants?
Yeah, I have not rented. I've had a whole bunch of inquiries from sports related uses. No surprise, there's a tremendous appetite for that. Also for some, I'll call it indoor entertainment, like children's entertainment type uses. And none of those have posted with a deal yet. Those are tough uses to make sense of financially, because these are very expensive buildings. And so we're not discouraging those uses, but they're not on a dead run for the finish line here either. So I don't want to oversell or undersell those uses. We'd be thrilled to have any of those uses, but it's they've yet to sort of be upgraded. I call them suspects, and then I call them prospects. So they're have not moved beyond suspects. So I don't have any other updates on users for you. Yes, John.
You know, looking at this map, I don't think anybody ever envisioned all of the traffic that this is going to cause. You got 6 buildings, 6 big buildings. You have maybe apartments that are in there. How are the local roads going to be able to handle the traffic that this will cause? If you go on to Latrobe now at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, you're lucky if you can get across White Rock Road. That's how heavy the traffic is there. So how are you going to deal with all of the traffic that this is going to produce?
Well, I mean, first of all, the general plan does anticipate the traffic that's produced by the R&D zoning on the entire site here. That's one of the reasons why it is, in fact, the by right development. So this land was programmed for that use long before Blackstone or Valley View or any of those other communities were even a concept. So there is a significant allocation for traffic in the general plan for the business park and for this site specifically. These uses under a discretionary approval will require a specific traffic study. So that analysis occurs as part of the discretionary approval process. I guess I would point out that, for instance, some of the housing uses here actually are counter-cyclical to the regular traffic patterns. So my suspicion is that the traffic report will likely be relatively generous to those uses mixed in with the other commercial and R&D uses because of their different traffic peaking. But that's the subject matter of a discretionary approval. So there will be an entire process there. But I do want to point out that we're building a private road here, which essentially goes to a signalized intersection at this location here. That's cutting off a huge chunk of the traffic that's struggling at this intersection here. And this intersection struggles really for 2 reasons, in my opinion. One is the tight adjacency of Robert J. Matthews, and then the other is the peak loading of this intersection in connection with the John Adams Academy, particularly their release traffic in the mid-afternoon.
But where traffic really backs up is when they approach White Rock and Town Center. And that traffic backs all the way up because there's people going into Town Center, people going onto Highway 50. You know, are you going to take that into consideration? Does any money come from your corporation to take care of that?
We pay a TIF fee on every square foot of building that we produce. We're producing a huge section of private road, which essentially is operating as a public road. We're producing a fully signalized intersection here. We're producing a variety of minor entrances to the project here. And you know, all of that is part of the traffic solutions that arise out of new development in this community or any community.
Yeah, okay. I just want to ask just one other thing on those other pieces, like the ones for high density residential. Do they all have to have a CEQA? Do they have to go through a CEQA?
The proposal for a rezoning here is subject to the CEQA process as a discretionary approval.
And they would have to have a CEQA.
That is correct. Yeah.
Get ready to get to work. No, I was going to say, you know, we had heard that's consistent with what we had heard when we did. Are we calling it Heritage 3 still, or when they converted, you know, the Carson Creek Pacific Band and Vision, you know, the R&D and the commercial and all those aspects, and at the time when we talked about that, the discussion with Lennar was that it actually would be less traffic with residential than it would be with the R&D buildup, but
But that was because
Until
they
you-
were all seniors.
hey, settle
Okay.
down. I'm there now
You know, and
too.
I'm a senior, so I'm telling you this, it was because they were seniors, and seniors do not travel as often as people who are non-seniors.
So, but yeah, but I mean, that's consistent with what we heard before. So, but we're willing to hear about it as it develops, so.
Okay.
Are there any other questions up here? In the room? Let's get a stand up. Can you get to a microphone? You know what? Why don't you stay there? I'll bring it to you. How's that? Well, don't let them get around. This is as fast as I go. There you go. Thank you.
Yeah, you are terrific. Yeah, hi, Scott. My name is Bill Knox, and I live in Four Seasons. And in fact, I, like Mr. Rasslier, have lived in Four Seasons for about 19 years. So definitely we've seen a lot of growth, and we anticipate a lot of growth. But my question really has nothing to do with that. My question has to do with the you referenced, I believe, a multi-use trail. Am I correct?
Yes.
Okay. Could you please talk a little more about that? What you envision, you and your company envision that to be, and how it will work?
Sure. I'm going to go up a little bit to 10,000 feet and I'll come back down to your question. Because Latrobe Road is pretty busy and not very pedestrian friendly, and because there's already a Class 1 bike trail on the other side of Latrobe Road that was produced in connection with the Valley View specific plan, Blackstone as we call it, we have elected to emphasize taking pedestrian traffic and bicycle traffic and there's a fair amount of folks who use and have used our land over the time we've owned it to get out and get a walk in. You know, there are not a lot of good sidewalks in the business park, and a lot of people have over the years used our project. And I think you've seen the level of quality that was put into this piece of First Road that we produced here. And so the concept for this is really twofold. One is to create a way to circulate around inside the project. And if you follow that it's an 11-foot concrete path that's surrounded by landscaping. So it's big enough that bikes at rational speed and pedestrians can kind of coexist on it. And we've proposed to build that really from this intersection here along the front of the project here, and then turn up and go all the way along this. We hugged the proposed community commercial side of this private road here. And you'll notice that we didn't punch this road through to here because we didn't want to push any more traffic potentially from this area directly into the most impacted part of Robert J. Matthews. So we end this road here and we end the loading and other activities here. But the multi-use path here comes across a culvert and then follows all of this all the way up to here, and then it turns out and then it comes to the here where you can also hit the Class 1 bike path. But then we also have a fully developed road system here, which would be built to the county standard with a full sidewalk on both sides of that. And we're not proposing any parking on the street, so that becomes a way to migrate around. So for the casual sort of walker, it creates a way to circulate and interact with the entirety of the property, creates an opportunity for them to hit this retail, presuming that this becomes some retail type uses, gives them the opportunity to hit that. But it also, if you just want to take a walk, you can essentially make a big loop through the project. And then from a bicycle standpoint, you have an established Class 1, I think that's a Class 1, correct me, those who are more skilled than I am, coming through Heritage here, that then because this is already existing here and because you've got natural area here, this is going to have to, I think, be a class 2 along Golden Foothill, but essentially it gives you the opportunity to connect to this piece or to connect to the class 1 here. So I don't know if I've adequately answered your question. Ask more if you want, Dwar.
No, Scott, you've done very well. I guess my question is, when do you anticipate with all this development going on, starting on this project? By project, I mean the multi-use trail.
So actually the first part of this is already built. It's built from here to here. And then of course, this piece of road is built from here to here already. Actually, I was with Department of Transportation today working on this road, the standards for this, standards for the intersection, sort of agreeing on what would need to happen for these turning movements to occur here in and out. This is proposed as a right in only. So essentially it just allows traffic to decelerate on the Latrobe and just kind of slip in here. But then whatever utilization occurs here would then come back out to the intersection. And I haven't forgotten your question. I'm coming back to it. And then here we also have a right in and a right out that's proposed here. And this is kind of a departure from kind of the historic strategy with regard to Latrobe, where we were really trying to force all of the traffic to these singular signalized intersections. But I think that over time, there's a realization that to the extent that we can peel some traffic out of these intersections in ways that doesn't cause clogging of traffic movements on Latrobe, but that actually takes pressure off of the intersection. So these are mostly inbound movements. Here we have one minor outbound movement. So our goal is to build this piece of road next. And we're finalizing the design for that right now. The application is in. So I'm hoping to be able to start working on this piece of road next year. And then depending on how the zoning process goes forward, then this minor piece of road would be dependent upon the specific plan moving forward, because if it didn't, then there might be a different something that needed to be built. But for sure, this piece of road is sort of the foundational part of the transportation corridor that runs through the project. Did I get to your question adequately?
You did, Scott, and I look forward to seeing how this progresses as time moves on. Thank you.
I just want to add,
You know, you realize that DOT has now actually closed Carson's from the other side going up to truck traffic. And that's for a reason, that anybody who's on a bike who's walking does not want to be on a road that has big trucks, trailers, and whatever. How many lanes will be on this
By the way,
road?
John, you're welcome.
Yeah, and to be clear, we have no opposition to that. We felt
Yeah,
like it was a perfectly rational strategy as well.
Yeah.
So this is to the county standard 2 lanes plus bike. So and it'll be a lower speed road, right? It's not intended to be a minor arterial or it's an internal road to a existing, an operating business park. So 25 to 35 is kind of my guess of what speed limits would end up being there.
All roads inside the proposed project would be private.
Everything inside the project is proposed private.
And that means the county doesn't have to pay to maintain it. So. thanks for
We build it, we maintain it.
The thing is, now, you're riding a bike and you're sharing the road with a tractor trailer, with a cement truck. It's to say the least, is scary.
Well,
Okay.
just, I don't want to interrupt you, but the whole strategy here is that if you don't want to share the road there, you have an opportunity to be on a trail that gets you to the exact same place. So if you wanted to go up this road this way and you thought that was not a desirable way to travel, then your option is to come here and go up a trail that's only for pedestrians and bicyclists.
Yeah, but is it marked? Is it just a concrete trail? Does it have a mark on it and say pedestrians keep to the left or pedestrians keep to the right? Because that's something that has to be, if you're going to have a trail that's going to be shared with people walking and people riding a bike. They do that on the American River Parkway.
Mhm.
They actually mark the road. to
Well,
tell
and you also need
people
to
what side they
encourage
should
the
be on,
bicycles
you know.
to go not at a lower speed too, right? Because it is a shared pathway.
And now people with electric bikes.
Yeah, I understand. Those lines are getting very blurry.
Yes, they are. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, is there anybody else in the room? Bob, you ready?
Just to have a clarification, Scott, if I could. Obviously, the map you're showing right here, it's going to take some time to get to a stage where this comes to fruition.
It's
And
probably,
we all,
I
we all,
mean,
we know,
best
we all,
case,
we all,
kind
we
of
all
an 18
recognize
month.
that.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
about an 18-month process if everything were to go. Director Garner can probably speak to this better than I can, but my guess is the least amount of time to process that kind of a specific plan application is about 18 months.
Okay, my point is more immediately, or my question has to do with more immediacy. You have two buildings, they're near completion at this stage, two
Yep.
industrial buildings. That key off, and basically they're the northern extension of Carson Crossing. And one of the big issues, obviously, that you've heard expressed at Heritage and for Four Seasons has to do with concerns about increased traffic that could emerge as a result of these two buildings. My question is, looking at the two buildings and noting that there are, I believe, 25 total roll-up docking stations or whatever you want to call.
Sure.
That would might preclude or might suggest to somebody that would result in some increased traffic flow. And I know we've had discussions about mitigation. Can you just address some of your thoughts on mitigation?
I want to do some clarifying
Okay.
there. For sure, there's new traffic that comes out of new construction. So the question here, is that traffic anticipated in the general plan, or is that traffic not anticipated?
I'm talking
in the
about
general plan?
post-construction
So, but
of those two buildings. Yeah.
I'm not sure I understand your question, but I'm going to interpret and then you correct me if I'm wrong. I think what you're asking me is, when does this piece of road get built? Okay, so restate.
No.
and I'll
My
try and
question is,
follow.
until such time as that road can be built out, there is still going to be some kind of impact as a result of those two buildings having occupancy once the use has been approved and move forward.
Yep.
Given the design and given the possibility, not probability or anything else, but the possibility that there could be a number of additional trucks.
Well, it's a certainty.
becoming-
It's not a possibility, right? They
Okay,
didn't
all right.
exist and now they do exist. So it's a certainty. These buildings were approved in the existing transportation network, right? So these buildings were approved to be able to come in off of Latrobe, come down here, and the trucks can enter the site here, or they can enter the site here. And until this piece of road is built, the path of travel for those trucks is to come right back to Latrobe Road in the existing road network.
Or loop through Carson Crossing south.
Or no. Are they, they're not going, I don't think that's the issue. I think that they would come this way. Why do you think that they want to drive a truck through Heritage?
The point fact, they do it, DOT's already taken measures to help mitigate that as we stand and as we talk. Again, I'm just trying to give you an opportunity to alleviate some
Well,
concerns that
I
I've
mean, I
had
guess
expressed.
we've all agreed that that's not a truck route. So I'm not making a case for it to be a truck route. I don't think the planning process made a plan for that to be a truck route. It's really just a question of enforcement. I don't know what else, I don't know what you're asking me to do. Perhaps you want to restate the question in some affirmative, something you want me to be doing that I'm not doing.
I'm not sure there's a solution I can give to you right now. I'm just asking a question, that's all.
Okay, I mean, the other way that these trucks could go is to come around come around Latrobe, I can't talk, Golden Foothill, and they can get back to White Rock and Latrobe through multiple pathways as well.
It would never go that way.
Why would they,
because
Shoot, why would they
it's-
choose to drive through Heritage but never go that way?
I'll tell you why. Because if they went through Heritage, it hooks right up to White Rock. And then from White Rock, they can hit Latrobe or new roads that'll take you up to Highway 50.
Well, if you come around on Golden Foothill, it takes you to White Rock as well.
It meanders through, it's a business park, it's,
You don't think that Carson Crossing Extender doesn't meander?
you know, I would not see people using, trucks using that road. I think they would stay off that. In fact, now that they've closed Carson's to trucks, nobody uses that road. They now come down White Rock and go into Folsom to do their, to do the stuff that they're going to do. They go down White Rock now, they cross the county line, and they go into the new city of Folsom that they're building there, okay? And that's where all the truck traffic is coming from now, for the simple reason that they wouldn't want to go through, you know, through Golden Foothills. No, I don't see that happening. I mean, I may be wrong. Sometimes I am, ask my wife, but,
No one believes that. But so in terms of this project, though, the traffic analysis would speak to some degree about what the potential impacts would be with proposed. Bob's question is about more aligned with what's existing now, what you're entitled to.
Right, so the existing uses the existing road network with the understanding that the county has identified Carson Crossing as not a truck route.
And you spoke a little bit to the proposed roundabouts in the CIP, and we actually had DOT made a presentation here with the traffic sim and showing, and I think we have it posted on the APAC website. So it's, you know, it's a moving diagram. It shows it's a video that shows, you know, we all think that roundabout's so close to the intersection, right? That's a challenge, but actually in the design right now, as they've done the sim, it looks like it flows better. We'll find out. So I guess I'll leave it at that. So are there any more questions in the room? Oh, are you ready? You have a microphone back there someplace? Yeah, most our batteries are all dead up here.
Hi, good evening, Scott. I'm Dave Spar. I live north of Highway 50 and not near the project. Although I've always liked the project ever since Sammy Simo built it. So I've watched it for the last 33 years. I'm curious, typically we buffer industrial with commercial use before residential. Here you have high density residential next to an industrial use without a buffer. Why did you choose that route?
Actually, it gets buffered by the nature of the use. So you have an office front here, double stack parking, and then a relatively wide road with landscape on either side, and then it's buffered on every other side there. So it's relatively common in mixed use business parks to, in a more modern approach, develop, put the housing and the businesses together. It is important to sort of manage the.
Mixed use would be commercial, retail, and residential. Typically doesn't involve industrial. So now you have a mixed use of residential and industrial. That's unusual.
I guess I could point to projects where we're successfully doing it in other locations. So perhaps good people can agree to disagree.
Well, I think I know we'll have another opportunity to talk to you. There's your invitation. But if
Hang
we,
on a
if
minute,
you,
John, I was gonna ask Scott a question.
Sure.
Scott, I think what Bob was trying to get at, which I was gonna intersect with this road, the new road that you're gonna build, are you gonna complete the road prior to any of the other 4 warehouses being built?
Yes. Yeah, we
Okay.
couldn't serve those other buildings
Right.
without
Okay.
completing that piece of road.
I think that was, one of the things that, you know, that
Yeah,
he was trying to get a point
our
across.
goal is to go to work on that piece of road as our next construction activity.
Okay, all right.
so what I was saying is that what was I saying? But we'll have an opportunity if there's something you could show us, like another project that demonstrates sort of that compatibility with that'd be, I think, valuable. I know that, you know, I was in logistics for many years, and there's some in mostly in Sacramento and, you know, around Northern California, but there's some odd places, even in the old days, where, you know, at least 100,000 square foot building and it's nothing but houses across the street from it and behind it. And so that was always the thing. We tried to be sensitive for our uses, but the building was there 20 years before we got there. So that was always but now I think that, people recognize the need for the buffers that, I know the state has their challenge in, mostly in, the Inland Empire with the big warehouses, but,
You take a look at Heritage 3, which many of their houses, abut, what is that, the big warehouse,
and I want to call it DST, but that's not it.
It's Broad Ridge.
Yeah, thank you.
Ridge, yeah, and those people are looking out at a huge gray building, which is, maybe they'll paint something on the side of it.
Possibly.
A mural of you, perhaps.
Possibly. I can say that there is a well-established apartment developer who very much would like to develop this site. So they're a holder of their finished projects. So
Hang on.
and I can say that we have a fair amount of residential in our larger business parks, which is adjacent to, not, again, the activity the noisiest activity is in the truck bay. And so here you have 160-foot building depth right there. So from the loading bay to here to where you'd have your first building, that's another 160 plus or minus feet. So you're well over 300 feet with the building intervening between the loading area and the closest residential in this example.
So, but what's proposed here, if it progresses, obviously be a sound analysis too, that we can weigh in on. I'm sure we will.
Yep.
So, but I do want to make sure we're not missing anything. Greg, are you ready?
And you stop me if you've already considered this, but it's a private road. The vehicle code cannot be enforced on a private road. So I guess in your planning for the road and development with DOT, I just recommend that, you build it to the specs where the vehicle code can be enforced, because you're gonna have to get a resolution from the county. So the code can be enforced on the private road.
Yep. And this will be a lower speed road than some of the other roads in the business park.
So, you ready?
So Scott, my concern, I mean, I like the idea of having residential and more housing, but would you want the county to condition the use of your 2 industrial buildings on how much light, hours of operation, and noise by decibel because you have residential next to it?
I'm not thrilled about that prospect.
You lose the tenant, yeah.
Yeah.
We don't want to lose the tenant, we want to gain a tenant.
That is correct.
Could you pass the microphone backwards? Sharing is caring. Thank you. As long as it's green, you can talk.
Hi, Scott. I'm Mary Easley. Can you hear me?
I can hear you
Okay.
somewhat. And I forgot my hearing aids this morning, so I'm gonna cut my ear.
I live in Reflections, and I was wondering, the green area on the left there, is that where Carson Creek is?
Yes, all of this green that you see here, remember I spoke about the conservation easement area? So everything you see in green here is the conservation easement. So here's channel 1, as we call it, which is the remnants of an existing creek that sort of ceased, or drainage that ceased to exist and was piped when the early portions of the business park were developed, but still receives water from the storm drainage in the business park. And then this is channel 3, which is a natural drainage, which comes from up the hill here. And this is a smaller drainage. It's in most places you could hop across it, or I can still hop across it, but my hopping's not what it used to be. And then this is an engineered ditch here. This takes a significant amount of water that's coming out of Blackstone and comes down through an engineered ditch, and then eventually makes its entry into Carson.
I'm concerned more about the large green area there. How close is the road going to be to the creek? And I believe that the creek is still a protected area.
So this line right here, this dot dash line, is 50 feet from the mean high water mark, I think is the technical term that gets used. So here we have a little bit of additional linear kind of park space that's here. So the closest edge of this approximately, I would say, is 80 to 90 feet from the high mean water mark at the closest point here.
And is there any threat of that road polluting the creek?
Doing what to the creek?
Polluting it?
Polluting the creek. Well, I mean, the water that comes off of this would go through a modern stormwater treatment facility to the current standard, which would be built in connection with the road. So it would be at the current state of the industry for stormwater treatment. That would be conditioned as part of the approval for the road.
And one other question, the trucks that will be delivering to the large buildings there at the bottom, will they be coming in and out like 24 hours a day?
I don't know. I mean, I think it's possible that there could be deliveries that are occurring overnight. It's pretty common for buildings to load and unload at non-peak traffic hours because, you know, the trucks are trying to get in and out when there's the least amount of traffic. You know, which is why this whole concept is built around buffering the existing uses. So if you were to draw a line to Heritage here, it's about 900 feet from this here to the closest Heritage house. It's almost 1,000 feet from this line here to the closest houses in Blackstone. So the concept here for the industrial was essentially to turn it inside of itself and to push the industrial as far to the left on the site as it could to the west to be able to allow distance between the higher volume industrial buildings and the existing housing that surrounds the business park in this area. And then the natural area is serving as a buffer there as well.
Yeah. I'm concerned about the traffic at night. I know that I live on Primavera and I can hear cars in the middle of the night when they go down Carson Crossing there. I can hear them. And the homes in Reflection that are closest to Golden Foothill Parkway there, they're like right across the street, especially from the building that would be on the left side there. And I'm sure they would hear trucks all night if they were coming at night. The people would be kept awake by the trucks.
I think it depends on the person, I suppose. But
They're like right across the street. I
Well,
know
when you say
people
right
that live in
across
the
are you
first
talking
two
about-
houses.
Are you
And
talking about here? Or are you talking about
I'm talking
in
about
Heritage?
the Reflection side of the road and the first streets that are closest to Golden Foothill Parkway.
Right, so the closest house there is about 900 feet.
No, they're closer to the street.
I'm not, I
They're
sadly don't
closer
have
to
an
Golden
aerial.
Foothill Parkway. So if a truck comes up that street, they're going to be awakened at night by it. I know the people that live in those homes and how close they are to the road
To the
and
road.
to the,
At the end of the day, this is a business park. These are approved uses in the business park. This is what this land was intended to be utilized for.
okay, but why would the planning committee have allowed a business park with trucks delivering at night to be built so close to a
This land
senior
was
community,
sold
a
and
55
anticipated
plus
for its
community?
use long before Heritage was an idea, long before Blackstone was an
But
idea.
then why did they build Heritage where it is, knowing what they did
That's a
about
good
that?
question. I was opposed.
Yeah,
I was opposed to that. I felt like it was too close to the existing business
Previous
park.
boards. is
Yeah.
What it was. Previous boards is the ones that approved it.
yeah.
So it is where it is right now, and there's precious little we can do about it, but I'm hoping as we analyze this, the uses that come forward, that, you know, that there's an opportunity to have some feedback, as it will be a matter that the board and the planning commission will weigh in on. It's a deliberative process. And so there's an opportunity to engage with Scott and his team and see, you know, hey, what's possible? How could this be better?
Well, it is a good time to be able to sort of reiterate sort of why I'm standing here, right?
Yeah.
Which is to talk about rezoning some of these lands that are currently zoned R&D to uses which arguably create more buffering.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
right now, the way it's entitled on that land is that they could put a lot of industrial in there. And what they're proposing is a different mix. So potentially, as we have a discussion about this and listen to what's proposed, there's an opportunity for things to be better than they could be. But we know there's some issues right now. So, you know, you and I right now can agree or disagree on things, but our process here is that as they propose their project and it moves forward, we would like the opportunity to weigh in and have discussions about, geez, we'd like to see this could be a little better if. And maybe we're wrong, but it's an opportunity to have the discussion. So we're hoping that you'll participate with us.
Yeah. Or maybe even consider limiting truck traffic in the middle of the night or all night long there, you know, maybe limited to daytime deliveries.
It's an existing road with, you know, so obviously those are discussions that people will ask us questions as it moves forward. Tim, did you have a?
Scott, the 4 proposed additional industrial buildings, would they be built on the same concept with the loading docks in the middle?
Yeah, John, can you roll one slide down?
Down.
Because I anticipated this question. So here is the same, here are these buildings, all of them. So the loading alley, if we want to call it that, is to the interior of all of these. And that buffering distance that we've talked about, if you were to measure from sort of the face of the loading docks to the closest houses over here, is consistently in that sort of 900 plus feet of distance to almost all of the housing on this side. Here it's 800 to 900, I think, to the closest houses.
Okay. Well, with that, do you have anything? I was going to say, we've used a lot of your time this evening. It's a long day.
I'm happy to be here. Look,
So,
this is an iterative process and
so,
we're happy to participate in it.
We have one question online, and if I can get to it, we'll get that, and then we got to get moving along.
Get moving on. We're getting late.
Yeah. Sue's been waiting. Sue, you should be able to unmute.
Yes, I've got a concern about the buildings that you have there right now. There's something like around 16 loading docks, and they don't seem to be loading docks for just cars, for big semis. When you came and talked to us at Heritage, you told us that there wasn't going to be anything like that. And I was wondering what's going on. Like Mary, there's a lot of concerns about the traffic and the noise. And when you've got just for those 2 buildings, 16 semis loading and unloading, no matter how much of a buffer you're going to have, it's going to be mighty noisy. You know, it seems like that what you told us in the meeting, you're not holding to it.
There's a lot of people in this room that were at that meeting. Did anybody in that meeting hear me say that we were not going to have semi-trailers in the loading positions at these buildings?
You said it was going to be limited.
You did mitigate, that there would be mitigation in terms of use and size. You did.
I don't recall that, but I'm happy to go back and revisit the conversation. But these loading bay, these are standard loading bays for industrial buildings, which are intended to receive over the road truck traffic and local truck traffic. So if somehow that came out of the conversation, surely was not my intention to make that as a point. That is the purpose of these buildings. That is the zoning for these buildings, and that's
okay. And you also led us to believe that you were going to put in a grocery store, and today you said, oh, it's not zoned for that.
I also did not tell you that I was going to put in a grocery store. I said that we were pursuing grocery uses, and I couldn't put in a grocery store under the current zoning. So if we go back to the drawing with the pink, this has to, if this is going to be used for a grocery store, that rezoning would need to occur to one of the commercial uses that permits a grocery store.
Okay, well, there's maybe a problem with schematics, but a lot of people were under the impression that you were implying that those things were going to be there in that way.
All I can say is I'd be thrilled to have a grocery store that was on these sites.
The
There are
grocery
some,
store isn't really the main thing. It's all the noises that's going to be coming from your two warehouses plus probably additional 4 more.
Well, we're obviously not going to address all that tonight, but Sue, thank you for providing that input for us. Obviously, as the project moves forward, we'll have an opportunity to discuss. And, but we are getting late. We have one more, Bill has something.
Just one more thing. One thing that we did talk about was limiting parking and on-street truck idling, because that would be a serious noise
that's
issue.
right. So we are not proposing any parking along this street here. And, you know, we will include in our leases no idling provisions in the leases as a condition of
Golden Foot.
Yeah,
Might be a matter for DOT.
yeah, I mean, unfortunately, I've faced this problem in other places, right,
Yeah.
where you run into jurisdictional overlap issues. So I can develop standards for what happens on the property. I can push on tenants to address issues, but it gets really gray as to how I interact with a delivery person who's on a public roadway.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's where we have to be working actively with the county to address any issues that develop along the way.
All right. Well, we've used a lot of time tonight. Thank you. We
Thank
appreciate
you.
it. I recognize
Thank you.
it's a very long day.
Yeah, no, happy
And,
to be here. Thank you for having me. Thank you very much.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
So we're going to move ahead here. We have an opportunity tonight. I'm almost there. Sorry. I'm going to get to, here we go, Karen. Did you want to use that microphone up there? You can hold it however you want to. As long as it's green, you're good to go. So we have Director of Planning and Building Department, Karen Garnish, here tonight. And we, because Scott was here and we're talking about the J6 process, it's a good opportunity for us to hear again, what is a J6 process? And we've seen it before, but not everybody knows about it. So Karen, thank you for being here tonight. Recognizing everybody at the county. This has been a couple of tough weeks, but I appreciate you staying late with us tonight.
Yeah, no problem. So yeah, I'll just briefly kind of wrap up the conversation tonight with a little bit about what the J6 process is. That's what you normally hear it referred to. All J6 is just the naming convention that we have for a big set of policies that the board approves and we follow as staff. But what it is, it's a pre-application process. We require it of some projects. For any project, it's voluntary if they want to participate. And what it does is it gives both the board, staff, the public, an early opportunity to look at a project before the developer puts too much money and time and effort into a final design. They can get some initial feedback. It is required for projects that are doing a general plan amendment that have at least 50 housing units. And so the last one that we did was, if you, pay attention, like I know you all do, to every agenda that we have in front of the board, we did the Community for Health and Independence. That was a J6 process. And so what we look at and what we present as staff, we look at the application that comes in and say, how does this fit in with the general plan? And when I say, how does it fit in with the general plan? I don't mean as the general plan stands today, but if it were to be approved and it were to change the general plan, get the zoning that it needs, how would that fit in with our policies? And if you're familiar with the general plan, there's policies about just about everything in there, from open space to traffic to, you know, the land use and services. So we'll look at those policies. We'll present some information to the board and explain how we think it fits in. We'll also highlight some of the big picture items that we think are going to be of most interest. So traffic certainly will be one of them that we'll point out and talk about a little more in depth. But just to be clear, it is not a really super in-depth discussion at this level. It is really intended to be high level, so that there can be that feedback and discussion early on, and that the applicant can then maybe go back and make some tweaks and changes to the project before coming forward with an application for all the entitlements. Pre-application, there's no approval. It's really just information to the board and feedback. So we'll do this process with Gateway, and when we're done with that in front of the board, Scott still can't go out and build what he's showing. He will have to turn around then, submit all the applications and the fees for the entitlements. That's when we'll do the more in-depth of looking at, you know, what level of environmental review is required. And then Scott and his team will need to prepare all those documents. So we do anticipate a, you know, pretty in-depth environmental review. Traffic will be a big part of that. So everybody will, when it comes through with the entitlement piece, we'll have an opportunity to take a deep dive on that. I anticipate that Gateway will probably go before the board with this pre-application J6 process, likely in January or February. Scott doesn't even know this. The staff report is actually about 95% done. We're almost ready to go. We just have full agendas the rest of the year. So January looks like the first available time we'll have to get in front of the board. And we'll have, of course, a couple of new board members, including incoming Supervisor Ferrero. So I'm glad he's here to get at least a little early peek at this particular project. Let me see. There are some specific things, and I have some copies of this J6 policy if anybody's really interested or needs some material to help them sleep better tonight. But we do look at a few specific things. So is it, again, consistent with general plan? We go through that. We look at the public infrastructure, facilities and services, again, at a fairly high level, but just so we understand what is being provided. And then we do look at if it provides an additional public benefit. So anytime we do a general plan amendment, we're always looking at, hey, if we're going to do this, because this is not what we originally intended in our general plan, but if we're going to consider this general plan amendment, are we as a community getting a benefit from this? Is it better in some way than what was proposed? So we look at things like, will it increase, and these are specifics in the J6 policy, does it increase employment opportunities? Does it provide a different type of housing or more affordable housing? Does it provide opportunities to retain retail sales and sales tax revenues? And there's another one that protects and enhances the agricultural natural resources. It doesn't have to meet all of those. It can just meet one or more of those. So we'll evaluate those as well. So that in a nutshell is the J6 process. Again, that'll probably be in January. We'll certainly notify you when that is ready to go. The application is already on our projects in your area website. So if you haven't taken a look at that, you can view the maps that were shared tonight with some other information as well. The projects in your area, and that's just going to the county website, going to the planning pages, and then you'll see a blue box that says projects in your area. Click on there. Any questions?
Yes, not so much a question. When you made this presentation to the supervisors, you seem to not take into consideration all of the work that APAC did, APAC's Transportation Commission did, that Scott did by having all these meetings with the community, with people on this board who actually went to all of these meetings. Your presentation seemed to not even mention this or even put it into the picture. And I personally would like to know why.
When I went to the board with,
The parcel split.
Yeah, about the J6, the
It
partial
wasn't a
split.
J, that was a.
And there are people here who put in a tremendous amount of time to study this, to give you information about it. And yet it seemed that it was never mentioned, that it was never taken into consideration. And that many of us felt that that was really an insult.
well, I apologize for that you felt that way. I certainly recognize the amount of work that you put into the comments. The parcel map is a little different than the entitlements that we're talking about. So all those comments we can certainly look at in terms of, you know, the land use changes and so forth, that type of comments. But a parcel map is, and this is oversimplifying it, but it's really just putting a line on a map. It doesn't change the uses. It doesn't give new entitlements as far as the ability to build something different. That has and continues as it stands right now is still allows for R&D uses. And the parcels that were created simply created additional parcels, but they still only can have R&D uses. As was mentioned before, the things like traffic and environmental impacts were previously considered and approved. So parcel map did not create anything new that triggered any new traffic or triggered any new environmental impacts. So that's why it wasn't mentioned specifically in that parcel map application.
I think many people felt that it should have been mentioned. Many people didn't understand, or they felt that this parcel split no longer required CEQA, studies and things like that. There was a lot of information that was not there, and people on this board and people in this audience had been going to these meetings, and now all of a sudden the J6 thing comes up without us really realizing about it. Okay, so like
J6.
Yeah, your presentation about the parcel split.
That was at the appeal, and it's the parcel split, it wasn't a J6 though.
Well, it was part of the parcel. In other words, we were going on a particular path, and then all of a sudden you're on that path, and we didn't understand where you came in on that path, and we didn't understand what happened to all the information that we had gathered over 2 years talking to the developer. And many people felt that let down, that, why did we do all of this work and it wasn't even taken into consideration? So I just wanted to voice that. Thank you.
So, Linda, do you have a microphone? Yes. You're golden.
Thank you, first of all, for coming tonight. So when we talk about the because there's still a lot of work that goes into the presentation for J6, and it does go to the board, even though there's no decisions made at the time. After J6, kind of walk us through a little bit, what's the next step?
Sure. It's really up to the developer at that point as far as if and when they want to submit the application for the entitlements they need. So assuming that they do want to move forward with that, they can submit, anytime after that. Now, we usually do tell them, and this is what we've told Community for Health and Independence is, you know what studies you need to do. We would recommend they do that before they submit the application, because otherwise they submit an application and it just sits there, and the first thing we're gonna say is, you gotta submit these studies. So might as well just turn it all in at once. So that's really the process. Once those entitlements come in, it goes through our standard process of being reviewed, and you know, there's usually a lot of back and forth on that. DOT will take a hard look at that traffic study. There may be a peer review, probably some tweaks and additional requests on some of the studies before we've got everything complete. Once we're all satisfied, well, I should back up. There's also a technical advisory committee meeting in that process. So that is where we send out a copy of the application and materials to all the other affected agencies. That might be, you know, Fish and Wildlife. Even though the creek has already been protected, we'll probably send it to them again, just so they're at least aware of what's going on. And, you know, that would help address some of the concerns that came up earlier about, hey, what's the impact of the road on the creek? Fish and Wildlife can look at it and say, all right, we know what you're doing and we don't have concerns. Or, you know, if they did, they would let us know what those concerns are. We'll notify other agencies like the Transportation Commission, utilities, water agency. Everybody gets a chance to provide their input. That input turns into conditions of approval, so that when we get finally to the point of approving the project, there's pages and pages of conditions of approval that say, yes, you can build this if you do this, if you meet our standards, if you supply, you know, all the things that all the agencies require. So that's the process. There'll be environmental in there. We'll circulate the environmental as well, so that this particular project probably has more opportunities for public input than most, between the J6, environmental, and then the actual entitlements. Those will all be public hearings.
So thank you. So the J6 stuff only happens on discretionary projects, right?
Correct.
Okay. So if somebody submits a pre-application, do you first analyze if it would be ministerial or if it would be discretionary, or are there different applications to submit for those?
Well, they're two pretty different processes. So most ministerial just goes straight to our building division, and they're asking for an application because it has already gone through the planning process and been approved. That exact building may not have been looked at, but the fact that there would be, in this case, like a research and development zoned building of a certain square footage, that was already analyzed and approved.
Right. Okay. I only have a couple more things. So here's an example of one question in the projects in my area website.
Mm-hmm.
I had heard that Costco had resubmitted something.
Yep.
But I went to the website and that information wasn't there.
It'll be there by the end of the week.
Okay.
So,
so I guess about how long typically does it take once there's documents in hand to get it to a point where it's available on that site?
I'm trying to speed that up, but it is taking right now a couple of weeks.
Okay.
When just between, you know, we have one set of staff that actually intakes the applications, make sure everything's there and take in the fees, creates an actual physical file folder, and then it gets assigned to a planner. They go through it and kind of do that deeper dive of making sure everything's there. So once that's done, that's the point where we then make copies of everything and put it on the projects in your area website. But trying to see if we can reduce that down a little bit.
And I did actually also look in eTrack-It, but it wasn't there yet either. So I'm assuming, is that the main storage place? It goes there first before it goes on the website?
It should show up in eTrack-It first.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
So that it should be on there. I'll see if I can find the exact, it should be the same permit number that it's always been.
That's what I thought. I searched that and actually the parcel numbers too, just to get creative.
Okay.
So then my final question, because 2, 3 months ago, maybe, you brought up that you guys were working on process documents that would be published on the website, kind of step-by-step type things that you're
Yep.
a little easier to read for people, right?
Yeah.
I guess, what's the status on that?
Yeah, we are still working on that. We're not quite ready to put something out there. We've got some old information that we're looking to see if we can just update that at least for the interim and get that on there. And what I may should have my deputy director that is in charge of process improvements. I'll get some updates from him that I can share out through John and to the rest of the group. And
That'd be great.
yeah.
Inquiring minds want to know.
Yeah.
It
is
I was very
complicated.
excited when
I
that
mean,
was on the agenda.
Yeah, yeah.
So is
Absolutely.
it possible to get that deputy planner's information? Because some of us have a lot of input that
Oh,
we would
sure,
like
yeah.
to give him.
Absolutely.
Thanks.
Absolutely. We'd love that.
Thank you.
So, can we get a microphone back there?
Yes.
That be in the form of a notice of preparation for the EIR that'll have a complete project description?
That'll get added on there when that is ready. So the question, if somebody didn't hear, was a little bit more about the Costco project and the information. So the notice of preparation for the EIR, when that is ready, that'll get added to the same spot on the website. You know, right now we just have the application packet. That'll go on there. But we do add to the projects on that website as additional, you know, if they, like they'll, I think they submitted their revised traffic study, but if they do any more revisions, we'll add that on there as well.
Do you have any idea when the notice of preparation will actually go out?
I think it'll probably be, I don't know exactly because I'm not the project planner, but it's going to be a shorter time frame than you know, other projects because we have had this one for so long and we've vetted a lot of it already. So it's probably be first part of next year. There's a few minor changes, it looks like. I just was talking to the project planner on it today and he had his marked up copy of the site plan. There was a few pieces of information he's still looking for that they'll have to revise. But you know, it's pretty close. So,
After Christmas.
Yeah.
You have one question online and it's Joel Wiley. Joel, you should be able to unmute. There you go.
I think I unmuted, am I?
Yes, you're perfect.
Okay. You mentioned that when a project could be approved subject to conditions, who follows up that the developer complies with those conditions? And what is the process when non-compliance is identified and documented? That's
Good
all.
question. Yeah. So each agency who creates that condition is more or less responsible for ensuring that it is completed. And most of us all, you know, we're out there actually doing site inspections as it's being constructed. People think of just building out as being the one out there doing inspections, but we've got planners out there. I'm sure the water agencies out there. A lot of the conditions are related to the infrastructure and things. So we make sure that that's done right before we issue a certificate of occupancy for any of the buildings. But there are some conditions that are ongoing or further on down the road. And if there isn't compliance, then we can follow up on that. And there's different ways we can handle that. I mean, it could be a code enforcement issue if a sort of more effective tool or hammer that we have is if there's multiple buildings and say they are not complying with the first building, then we just won't give them an occupancy for that next building until they fix the issues with that first one. It does get challenging, I'll be totally honest, when we're talking years down the road. So as an example, I've worked in places where, you know, we have conditions that have to do with taking care of your landscape. And 10 years down the road, the landscape looks like crap, and you know, you've got different owners than who developed it, or even worse is when it gets sold off to multiple owners, and they're not, you know, half of them aren't taking care of the landscape, half of them may be. Those are difficult, and those are oftentimes, we just have to pick up the phone and talk to the owner or the developer and work something out, and you know, try and get them to comply. But ultimately, it could become a code enforcement issue that we can issue fines.
Thank you for the question, Joel. Are there any more questions in the room? Because technically we're past our time. I've got maybe 5 minutes. So thank you. We appreciate the fact that you've come all the way down to see us, and late in the evening. And don't forget, virtual is always an option. I'm going to jump in real quick and share this screen so we can run through this. And it's funny we talked about Costco, because here's what we have for Costco so far. You know, oh, I thought I had to share.
On this one, but you don't have it on now.
Now it should be.
There you go.
There we go. So we've looked at this for many years. I think my first glimpse, I was in Hawaii when I got the call about this. 5 years ago, maybe. Yeah. So so here we are. Costco's purchased both sides of the proposed development. It was previously owned by EDH 52, and Costco's gonna be on one side. They had some other proposals for the other side. There's a north side and a south side. It's east and west to me, but so the north side now, instead of it, the last proposal before Costco purchased the entire property, was for about 300 apartment, you know, multifamily with a couple of retail buildings. That is not in this plan now. Costco's proposed, they've gone back to having a fuel station. It'll be on the east side of, I'm sorry, the north side of the project. So, you know, as Karen alluded to, as those, oh, don't worry about it, we'll get it. As the documents become available, we'll start posting them. But this was just a screenshot that was sent to us so that we would see it. But what they're talking about now too is one thing we talked to DOT about for several years was that DOT was pretty dead set against a traffic signal in the middle, close to the interchange. But now it looks like there's still a traffic signal. So we still don't know what's going on with the extension of Country Club, which is in the CIP. There's an opportunity that Country Club extension could facilitate access to the elementary school through a signalized intersection with like a drop-off lot, which may or may not improve the situation. But this is what we're looking at right now. It's still the warehouse facility on the west side, and the fuel station would be on the other side. So as we learn more, you'll learn more. Some of the detail though, the warehouse building is still the same size. Parking stalls, still about 832 parking spaces. And they talked about 68 stalls for the fuel center to allow traffic in and out there. So this is not official yet. We just had a glimpse of this. So as we get more information, like I said, we'll post it. So are there any questions about that? Because we have no answers. So moving ahead. Oh, I'm sorry. Did I miss one? Oh, do you have a? Yep. Yes.
Nobody knows.
Yeah. We'll all find out. It'll be our little voyage of discovery together. So, but thank you for being involved, and you know, we want to be watching it. So thank you, George.
All right, see that.
So George has a long commute, and we thank him for showing up tonight and supporting us. So after the Costco, we wanted to remind people, these are still the projects that we're looking at. We're looking on final environmental impact reports on Town and Country Village, El Dorado, Creekside Village. They're preparing their draft EIR, the J6 for the AKT community and health and independence. They're waiting for an anticipated application. Marble Valley, Lime Rock Valley, Generations at Green Valley, all waiting for the final EIRs. We provided our comments on those. So that's where we're at with projects that it's still going to be a busy year coming up. The thing we did want to get to tonight, probably the most important, is that the way you become a voting member of APAC is that you work on a project review. And sometimes people will contribute and they'll volunteer to work on the project, but maybe because the industry, they don't want to be a formal member of APAC. They just want to make the contribution, and we appreciate any contribution. But Linda worked on 3 of our projects over the summer and into the fall, and she's willing to be a voting member of APAC. So welcome, Linda. We appreciate your contributions, and we know that you have a very analytical thought process when we're looking at these. So thank you for helping us. So, and now you can tell other people to help too. So, but that was, and then the last item is we have our officer election for 2025. And tragically, you're stuck with some of the same people this year. So, for coming 25, but
that's the recruiting thing. In 2 years, I want to see you guys up here and John and me in the audience looking at you.
I'll be back in Hawaii virtual. But Bill Jamaica has agreed to serve as secretary. Now, voting members get a chance to vote on this. It's kind of in the bag. So, but Bill, thank you, because you've contributed so much on our traffic and transportation. Bill does a lot of work that nobody sees. And so now everybody will see you all the time, and you're still doing a lot of work. But yeah, Bob was our secretary, but he got called up to the bigs. He's serving on the planning commission, and our charter indicates we have to have 1 chair, 1 vice chair, and a secretary. And we put the Jesse James on Bill. So thank you. We appreciate you being willing to do that. But the more people that participate, the less work it is for everyone. So again, anybody who wants to help out, we'll take your help. So with that, I'll remind people you can make public comments before our meetings. If you can't be here, you just apply them by Monday so we can get the question in. Because if it's a question we can ask a developer, an applicant, we'll get the answer and have it ready at the meeting. So email's on there and it's on the website as well. Our next meeting is in December on the 11th, 6:30 p.m. back here in this room.
We've all been elected then?
No, we're having an election. It's virtual. I'm sorry. The election for voting members, we send out a virtual ballot, and it's official. They have tracking IDs and all the good stuff. So you'll have the election results at the December meeting. Expect that ballot to come out the last week of November. It's kind of around Thanksgiving, but we'll allow about 2 weeks for votes. So with that, well, and John Heidel used to always give me a bad time about how long our meetings went. But then again, he was here to help. So, so in remembrance to John, we'll all say thank you for your participation, and we'll look forward to seeing everybody in December. So. Oh, that's going to make a noise.